we are going to discuss is about how can we achieve the incremental load by using a job control table. That's what we are going to take a look at it. So probably from today I'll start spending only 1 hour a day. We'll just try to see how far we can progress here. A job control table, whenever we are doing it, as I said, you need to create first, when you have to start with, you need to create two metadata tables. We can call it as two metadata tables. Can't hear you. Is everybody, can you hear me? Not audible. 1 second. Hello? 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 Can you guys hear me now? Hello? All right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, let's get started. So what I was actually talking about is when you want to go with a job control table, how we can actually extract the incremental data based on the job control table. So we will go with, we will create two metadata tables. I mean, similar kind of a metadata table. So I mean, different people will follow the different type of a design. So in our case, I mean, in my practical experience where I come across, we have actually two types of tables. One is called as a job control types, and this will contain the list of incremental loads, what we have, that we will get it. And in the job control table, actual job control table, it will have one metadata, one entry for each job, So what we do is, in general, what we do, the case is that, okay, first we will define these for each job. Whenever you create a new job, we will make an entry into this job control table based on the type of load, whether you want to go for a incremental load for a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis, that we will do it. So in this case, let's first try to define and these tables and understand how these tables will be there. Okay, so when I go here in my DB scripts folder, I already provided the DB scripts for this. So when I go to SP job control update types, if you open it, there are two tables which are there. One is job control types and another is a job control. So what you need to do is just create these two tables in your target schema. So let me go to my SQL developer. Where is this one, right? And I'm going to create these two tables and define a particular entry for my fact sales table. So let me okay, I'm going on to my target schema. So see, always use your target schema for creating a new tables. Do not create them in your source schema. Okay, now here I'm going to create. So when you are creating, just remove this TDBU, otherwise it will try to create in the TDBU schema, not in your schema. So just remove the TDBU dot, and in case if you want to prefix your schema name, you can prefix that. Now I just want to create these tables, so just select it and use F5 to execute. So what it has done first, it tried to drop the table because job control types is not available, and it has created a two different new tables. So once you create it, we will actually make a metadata entry here. We'll make a, concentrate here, there are a lot of concepts involved in this as well. We'll make a metadata entry. So if I see this insert statement, it will just make an entry into your job control update types table. What does it contain? It contains a job type key, and it will contain a start date expression, an end date expression, what is a description, created date, and the last updated date. What it has is, you will just define one job update type based on the incremental load that you want to pull. See, your jobs will be a daily basis, it will be there, and weekly basis it will be there. See here, what we are going to do, we are going to define one expression. Based on this expression, it will update the start date and end date in the your job control table. Okay, so for a time being, you just understand, in your job control update types table, we just have an expression. Based on this expression, it will stamp the dates in the job control table. Okay, so this is the start date expression which I have, and this is a end date expression which I have. So what is this incremental load? It will basically set the start date to the first day of the year and end date to the last day of the year. So it's like a yearly load, and you have a system date, this one. So let me try to run this. Row is inserted, and commit the data. Let me show you how the data appears here. So it may not be properly understandable when you first take a look at it. So what we do is job control types. So try to execute this one. So if you try to see that job control types, what it has, job type key is 1, and start date expression is this, and end date expression is this, and sets the start date, and this is your job control type. And similarly, I'm going to make one entry in the job control table also. What does a job control table does? And in the job control table, for each and every job name I'll make. So it's like for each and every fact load, I'll make one entry in the job control table. So what is your job control table here? So this is a one. I'm going to create one more entry in my job control table as well. So let me try to add this data also. So when I try to, when I try to execute this, so this here also you just remove the TDBU. Make sure that you do not have a TDBU here, otherwise you'll end up in, and just add it. So row is inserted. Forget about what dates are there in your job control table. So if you try to use the job control table, I have one entry wherein start date and end date values have been updated, and create date, updated date. So what I'll do now is I have to extract the incremental data based on the dates which are available in the job control table. Okay, that is my requirement. But how would I update these start date and end date value every day? Every day I should update before I start extracting the data from my source table. If I'm not updating the start date and end date value, then probably it will not bring the incremental data. So in order to do that, what I am going to do here is that first we have created a two metadata and we have just added it, and I'm going to create one stored procedure which will update my start date and end date, which will update my start date and end date in my job control table. So to do this, I'm going to update the job control, I'm going to create one script, stored procedure. This is that script. So I'll explain you what this script does. Okay. So if I take this one and go here and then paste it into my target schema, what it will do is, this is my stored procedure. What it will take is, it will take the job type key. whether you're going for a job type key 1, job type key 2, job type key 3. So this is the job type key. It's nothing but the key what you have inserted in the job control types table. Job control. Yeah, likewise. So you can add one. So one for a week, one for a yearly, 2 for weekly, 3 for quarterly. Likewise, you can add n number of keys. And then the start date expression and the end date expression, description, whatever. Oh, sorry, not here. Start job type key, start date, and then the end date. Now we have, it will also take the job name. If there is an error, it will basically return the error back to me. So what it is taking? It is taking a job type key, start date, end date, and the job name and the error. So what it will do is, based on my job type key, it will update the start date and end date expression in my job control table. So what it will do, if you see this, if a start date and end date value is not null, that means if I am passing any value for these two parameters, then it will not use the job type key. If I am passing any value for a start date and end date. So what is the logic here is, if a start date value is not null and end date value is not null, then it will take these values and then update it. If this is null, if a start date value and end date value is null, then it will go and pick up the values which are available in the job control types, right? So it will pick up the value for start date expression and end date expression, and that start date expression value and end date expression value will be updated in my job control table. So that is what we are going to do. Now I have done by using a dynamic SQL. So let's try to compile this stored procedure. So first procedure is compiled. Let's test this stored procedure. When I'm passing a start date and end date, whether it is updating the dates properly or not, let's verify. Okay. To do that, now if I go back and I'll have a stored procedure here and start SP job type update control. So if I pass start date and end date, it should stamp the values which I'm passing here, right? It should stamp it. So it is anyway, it's a varchar field. I think what format my date is, it is expecting my date. It is actually expecting in YYYMMDD format. Okay, so I need to pass the value in this format. So when I'm running this, okay, I need to run that in the YYYMMDD. So if I pass the values here, it has to update these values. Okay, let me pass this. Let's say I want to pass 2000 0101, and the next value I want to pass it as 2001 0131. It's basically the 31st January 2000. So, and the job name also you have to pass. So which job it has to update, right? So job name is, my job name which I have to update is S_M fax sales is my job name. So if I try to do this, basically since these values are not null, so it has to, or let's say the job type key is also 1. You just pass it anyway. When you run it, basically since it is, these two values are not null, it should stamp. When I run it, basically at this moment in the job control table, we have a start date as 1st Jan 2015 and end date as 31st December 2015. But when I run it, it should actually stamp to 2000. Let's see that whether it will work or not. So it is done. Now let me go and query this table and see what is the start date and the end date. So my start date is 1st Jan 00 and end date is 31st December. So what did I understand from here? Whenever I pass this start date and end date value, it will stamp this start date and end date in my job control table. What happens if I don't pass? Now let's go back again, we test it. Again I'm going to test this example. Here this time I'm not going to pass. That means I'm going to just specify it as a null, right? I'm going to specify it as a null. So it is going to be the null. That means you're not passing anything. If I don't pass anything, it should stamp the start date and end date in my job control table based on the expression that I have defined in my job type control type. So when I run it, it should do that. It is updated. Now let's go and verify the data here. So this time it should stamp it as a 1st Jan 2015 and end date as a 31st December 2015. So if I try, oops, this is interesting. Okay, see, now the question is like it has not updated it. So if I go and check, there is an error. It says that non-numeric character was found when the numeric was expected. Okay, so now what we need to do, it's basically that my stored procedure is having an issue. So whenever start date expression and end date expression is there, it is not able to update it. So basically update equal to 2. Okay, let me just try to verify this condition. Basically this is throwing an error because based on the start date and end date expression. So this is what I'm trying to do, basically select truncate of sys from dual. P start date is defined as an input. No, I have used V start date, not P start date. So I'm using V start date, V end date, and the job name. I'm not assigning the value to that, so it should be okay. When I do this, V start date and the V end date. Okay, let me just cross check this. Okay, this is my end date value. This will work here, but at the runtime it is not working. So yeah, this is the issue with the stored procedure, not with our approach. Okay, so let me try to define this. Okay, let me try to do this when I run. Yeah, it is basically updating it, but it is not able to find out what was the error. It says that non-numeric character was found when the numeric was expected. Okay, let me go back here. I need to verify the data in job control types. Let's try to check this query. Select truncate of sys here from dual, and then this. Why this update expression is not there? Start date expression and end date expression. Start date and end date. Update job control table. Okay, let me just try to print them. I'm not sure. Are there a start date and end date? I think it's there in the double quotes, right? This one? Yeah, this is correct. What I think The problem here is I'm not enclosing them in the parenthesis. That is where it is trying to miss. Okay, what I'll do is I'll first delete these things, delete from job control types. I'm deleting it, and let's reinsert it again. Commit the data. I'll do that. So what I've done now is I just added a quotes here and run this, commit the data. So this time I should have this one. I don't know whether this is a problem. Let's try to test it one more time. Now the job type key is 1. Let's try to check this. Yes. Still there is a non-numeric character was found when the numeric was expected. Okay, let me try to print. What is this VSQL? That I've done, right? It's working here when I do this. This is the one I try to do. This one alone. This works. I mean, it was update itself was successful when I ran it. So this is your one. This one is for an end date. This is working. Now let's try to print that VSQL. What is a VSQL value? I think it's a problem with the stored procedure, not with our V underscore SQL. So let me compile this again. Let's retest it this time. I just want to check what is the update statement which is being fired. Okay, interesting. So it's basically it is not replacing the values :1 and :2, which is using this value. So that means okay, sorry, I think I should have printed here. When I use can I use directly here instead of that? How does it works? Yeah, I'm trying to convert this query in a different way. Let's check that. We start date. We end date. And then I'll use where job name. What is this? How about this? Execute, and then this one is this way, and all right. Let me compile this.
Correct there, it is BMS, not DBMS. DBMS is not BMS.
No, here also, 1 second. DBMS? This one, huh?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so let me try to compile now. Let's see this before and this one is after. We have two things and we'll see now how it works. So job name should be replaced at the runtime, start date expression and end date expression, and execute this. Okay. This it will treat it as a character. Oh. start date, and everything else is this one. Okay, let's check this time and run. Okay. S underscore M fax sales is an invalid identifier. Okay, this is a new error. Okay. What is my update statement? If I look at the output, my update statement is this one, and where job name is equal to this. Right. Alright, so now we come to here. Job name should be in the single quotes. So what we can do, let me compile this. We'll see this time. Okay, it looks like working. Let's go here. Yeah, so it's working now. So let's try to test it from the this one. Let me run complete thing. So I'm just passing the job type key and then the job name here. So it will definitely should stamp basically the 1st Jan 2015 and end date as this one. So let me go back and then query my table, job control. So if I see here, it is stamping as 1st Jan and 31st December 2015. Okay, let me just take the backup of this. And okay, probably I'll just send you the updated one to you, which is this one is having a problem. So I just updated it. Now save it. See, what we are doing is still we haven't entered into the Informatica implementation. All I have done is I just make sure that every metadata, whatever I'm trying to build, is already available in this, and I'm just trying to check. Now what we have defined is we have defined a stored procedure, and this stored procedure I'm going to invoke it from the Informatica. And when I'm invoking from Informatica, these values, whatever we have, I'll pass them as a parameters. Whenever I pass start date and end date as a parameter, it should update the start date and end date in the job control table. Whenever I don't pass it, it should stamp this based on the job type key what I have defined in the job control table. So that is what so I repeat what we are trying to do. We have just defined a stored procedure, and this stored procedure will update the start date and end date in the job control table in two scenarios. So one is scenario 1. So scenario 1 is basically scenario 1, if I pass start date and end date, if we pass start date and end date values, it will stamp the same. It will stamp the same in job control table. And the second scenario is scenario 2. It basically stamps start date and end date based on the expression defined in job control types. Whenever start date and end date values are not passed. Whenever start date and end date values are not passed to the stored procedure. So that is what is a scenario 2. So now this stored procedure, I'm going to invoke it from the Informatica. So how would I do that? So it's just basically that it's in the same way. It's a pretty simple one, just like your drop indexes, how you have done. In the same way, I'm going to do it. So let me just go to my working folder, 9:30 p.m. EST. So I'm going to use the same dummy table as a source, so which I call it as m underscore job control update job control. So this is my update job control table. So this is my procedure which I'm using, and what is my source? Source is just a dummy source. We have created a dummy source, right? Stored procedure input. I think this will not work because we have to pass multiple inputs to your stored procedure. So let me create one more thing, one more dummy source just like this. This is for SP update. I think yes, this should work. Okay, let's try to use this one only. Okay, so I have a stored procedure input, and what I'll do is basically I'll just pull the same column multiple times. Okay, so we are passing how many values that does your stored procedure is actually taking? 1, 2, and then 3 and 4. These 4 values you want to pass it as a parameter, right? So the first one is a job type key. So here I'll mention it as a job type key, and the second one is a start date. So this is basically the start date value, what it is there, and the next one is your end date, and the next one is your job name. So these are the 4 values that you're passing to the stored procedure, and one is an output port that will capture it directly. Okay, and to pass these 4 values I need 4 parameters. Okay, now what I go and then do from here, I'll define 4 parameters quickly. So one is a job type key, because I want to parameterize them by using a mapping parameter. I don't want to hard code them anywhere. So all of them I'll just keep it as string of 100. So what we do is let's copy paste. It will be easier for us. So paste 4, and the next one is a start date. Anyway, this also is your start date, and the next one is your end date, and the job type key is your job type key, or next one is job name, right? So job name is this one, how it this. So these are all these things. So now we have a job type key, start date and end date, and then the job name. So I want to create a stored procedure transformation, so which we have compiled just now, and that is in my target schema. So let me connect to that, and this is my stored procedure. Import it. So what input it takes? It takes the inputs as job type key, start date and end date. These are all the job names, and whenever it returns an error I have to stop the session, right? So let's create an expression transformation. So this is the same thing that we are doing. That's why I'm going little fast here. Okay, expression underscore target anchor. So click on create and then done. Okay, so and this is your error. Let's say whenever your error message is null, that means there is a problem with your stored procedure. So out underscore error message, whenever it returns a null value, whenever it returns a not null value, that means there is a problem. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, in order to do this, if not is null of error message from the stored procedure, whenever this, oops, why port name itself is just like this. Oh, I think it's a keyword which will not be acceptable. So let's try to change this value to some other value. Error input, then that means your stored procedure has returned an error, right? So I need to stop the session. So I'll actually print the error message as part of it. Stored procedure has returned an error. So I want to stamp the same error message so that we can see that in the session log. Else we'll just stamp it at the same one. And this output I'm going to write into the stored procedure output flat file which we have defined in the earlier example. So that is your stored procedure output, and drag and drop this into this one. So save it. Now what we are doing here, we are just trying to pass these values as dynamically, right? So here you need to write a query, otherwise these values will not be replaced at the runtime. So just like the way how you pass the table name. So first one, comma, this one, first one is job type key, right? So mapping parameters, that is your job type key. And the second one is your start date, and the next one is your end date, and the last one is going to be your job name, and from dual table. So whatever the values that I pass at the runtime, these values will be replaced here in this. So just click on OK, apply, and then save it. Now whatever the stored procedure that we have defined, we are just trying to invoke that. Okay, so let me generate the workflow for this. I would like to go with a reusable session. Anyway, I just need only session. I don't want the workflow. Okay, so because I want to use this before my fact load, session. So I need only the this one session. So this can be available in any session. So you can use just an OLTP source. Dual table is accessible from anywhere. Just use it and click on next and then finish. Now I need to pass these values through the parameter. So I need to define a parameter, right? What is my session name? So based on the session name, I can define the parameter. So this should be my session. So where it is, update my job control. So for this session, I want to define it. See, this one we are all trying to understand to do the incremental load, right? So for a incremental load, I'm going to define a new parameter as such. So this is my session name. So let me define quickly in the putty. This is my UNIX box. Let me just log in as so cd/u01 app info, and then the server, let's say info shared, let's say the source files. So under this I just want to create a parameter file. So this is for my March 2015, let's say March 2015 batch, and fact sales incremental. This is for a fact sales incremental only, but for a job type. So I'll just append it as a job.prm. Okay. So in this, I want to define a parameters for this session. So what are all the values that you are actually passing? So enclose that in the square brackets. So the first one is going to be the $. So the spelling names should be same. Okay, if you are having a spelling mistakes or something, then it's going to be a problem. So now define the job type key is equal to 1, and the next one is, let's say, the start date. So I'm going to pass the start date value as, let's pass it as 2000 only, 0101, and the $. End date value is going to be the 2000 12/31. That's like a 31st December, and the job name is, so job name is equal to s_m fact sales, s_m fact sales, which it is there. Now I'm defining all of them. So just create it. So this is my parameter. Now we need to define an incremental load session. So workflow, just create. I'm creating a new workflow, so which I call it as wf_fact sales incremental. So this is for a which session? So for a job control. So I'll just append it as a job control. Now do this. Whatever the session that you have created, so just drag and drop and connect it, and you need to pass the parameter values, right? So this is the path where you are parameter is available. So now assign this, and the next one is a parameter file name is this, paste it, apply. Now whenever I run this session, what will happen? It will just update my dates in the job control table. So I need to make use of the job control dates in my source qualifier query, then only it will be useful, right? So now whatever the mapping that we have done, right? So if you see, if you recall what we have done, the fact sales incremental and all those things, right? So fact sales incremental, what we have done here in the first scenario, we have used the parameters to pull the incremental data, and in the second scenario we have used the mapping variable to pull the incremental data, right? In the third one, I'm trying to use the job control table to pull the incremental data. So let me create a new mapping, so which I call it as, instead of mapping variables, we call it as a job control table. So click on OK. I don't need any parameters, I don't need any variables for this, right? So here what I'm going to do, I'll modify my query in such a way that here I'll include my job control table, okay? And instead of comparing the date, it's like date open is between, I'll write it as job control table dot start date and ODS invoice dot date open job control table dot end date. So what will happen now, based on the dates that are updated in my job control table, it will extract the incremental data, because job control table and my source tables are available in the same database. What I'm doing from my Informatica session, I'm basically updating the job control table dates according to my convenience, I mean according to my incremental data load. So now save it. For this also this, there is a variable which is mentioned, so for this it is invalid. I'm just deleting that. Okay, variable was referred here, right? Set max variable. So let me generate the session for this. I'll set up this one. So when I go here, let me disconnect and reconnect. So you need to concentrate here. See, when we are testing it, how the process is actually happening. When I go, let me assign the connections for this. Anyway, we haven't assigned the connections. So what is going to be the source? Source is going to be my target. So it's nothing but my target underscore Karthik. And this one is also target underscore Karthik. And this is also going to be the and this one is also, it's like a target underscore Karthik. So just assign, apply the change and click on OK. Now we have now what I do is I'll just pull this session here. What will happen now? You need to understand. See, basically whenever I run the workflow, this workflow I'm going to schedule it. Okay. Whenever I run the workflow, based on the start date and end date that I have defined in my parameter file, it will update the dates in the job control table, and the same start date and end date will be used by my source qualifier query. So here I'll define a condition saying that when status is equal to succeeded, means whenever the session is succeeded and successfully updated a start date and end date value, then only I want it. So save it. Now when I run, what will happen? This will update the start date and end date value as 1st Jan 2000 and end date value as a 31st December 2000, and it will extract the date for my, it will extract the data for my 2000 year. So let me run this workflow and see how it is going to work. So if you don't pass the start date and end date in the parameter file, it will stamp the dates based on the job control update types. Job control types. So now let me use this one here. What I do is march this one. So if I go here, let's verify whether it is successfully completed or not. So when I go back, So this is this thing. Okay, it's failed. So let's check that. What is the reason? And okay. Okay, so it's a reason is that I have not I have not assigned any connection for a stored procedure transformation. So that's why it is failed. Let me go back and in my, sorry, not this one. So in my stored procedure, my stored procedure is actually available in my target schema, right? So let me use apply, save it. Now let's rerun this. It succeeded, it's updated, and okay, this one is failed. Let's check this now. Okay, so this is because your query is whatever is generated, that query it's throwing the error. So what is the error? This is a query and okay, it should be
You have written 2-bit range. Yes.
we have here also this 2 are there. This is the one. So you can even cross check because your start date and end date is already updated in the target table. You can run this query and check whether it is extracting the data according to my 2000 year or not. That you can validate. Okay, still it is an invalid relational. Date open between.
Directly, you can remove that.
Okay, now it is extracting the data for 2000 year. So if I take and I'll go and paste this query here, and since there is a change in the query, we need to refresh the mapping, and let me refresh it and rerun one more time. So I can rerun the entire workflow, it will just update it again, or you can just rerun only that part. Start the workflow and now check this time whether it will work or not. So this is the way that you can actually extract the incremental data by using a job control table. So first you need to have one session which will update the job control table, and another session which will extract the data based on the job control table. So this is how you can implement another type of an incremental load based on this. So first thing is defining a stored procedure. That's it. Once you define a stored procedure, it's just a normal process. You just pass the parameter, update it. So how general design of the workflow? See, we have discussed about the 3 different ways of extracting the incremental data. One is by using a parameters, another is by using a mapping variables, another is by using a mapping job control table. So basically, so you can define any one approach. Somebody has asked me the question last time, like which is a best practice in the real time. So it is more appropriate. I mean, like you can always control your job control table based on the just start date and end date. So suppose, let's say, assume that you're actually going on a weekly incremental load. For some reason, your last week incremental data is being corrupted in your source, I mean in your target table. So basically what you can do, you can just get rid of that data and then pass the start date and end date as a 14 days. So at a time it can process the 14 days data. So using this approach, you can extract the incremental data easily, and in case if you want to extract the historical data in the sense, suppose let's say every day my load is running. Now I have a data in my fact sales table. I have a data in my fact sales table from January 2013 to till date. I have a data. So later on what we identified is some of the data in the target table is corrupted. So you had to reload that data. So if you are using the job control approach, you don't need to define one more ETL component to do the historical load. What you can do is you can just go and pass the start date and end date value and then pass it. So according to that date range, it will pick up it. So job control table will give you the more flexibility to handle the data approach, not like your mapping variable approach. Mapping variable is something which is getting saved into your repository database. Always you have to overwrite that value. So which is a difficult task to do always. So if you are implementing something using a job control table, then it will be a better approach for handling all the type of data loads for your. It is like a long-term approach. I mean, like when you go to the support also, you can easily handle the data loads using this approach. So this is more about the handling of incremental data or handling of historical data or initial load. Yes. That's it I have for the day, and yes. See, most of you, when you are actually practicing, there might be the error cannot insert a null into the fact sales table. Okay, if you are getting that error cannot insert null, it probably the problem with your time dimension. See, basically if your date ID is null, definitely it will not accept. So you need to debug that and identify why your time dimension is returning, why your time dimension is bringing up the null value. So try to validate that. And also when you are passing the input to the time dimension, right? So try to apply the truncate function. Yes. So most of you will have a similar kind of an issue. So what you can do is here when you are fetching, in case if you have added an incremental data, so try to apply a trunc function here. So and then trunc function so that it will go and validate. See, if you have a timestamp in your time dimension, then it will not be able to pick up the data. So that's why you need to do one more thing is that it might throw the error when you are trying to insert a duplicate data as well when you are doing it in the fact sales. So for that, what is an approach is that what you can do is you can go to the fact sales table and you have a constraint which is defined on your date ID column as a primary key. So just try to disable the constraint what you have defined and drop the index what is associated with it. Okay, then you try to load the data, it will accept the duplicate values for the same date ID. So you must be, I mean, you might be having a problem with this fact sales incremental. So that is an approach, because why it is succeeded for me when I have implemented is because I've already dropped those in my schema. So in your schema it is not done, so probably you can just try to change it and then validate your solution, right? So this is more about the job control approach, and that's it I have for now for today. In case if you have any other questions, you can go ahead. All right, so if you are good with this, so probably we'll stop it here for now, and we'll discuss the remaining things in the tomorrow's class. Yes, sure, Bharat, you can come back. No problem.
Karthik?
Yes, Janani, go ahead, please.
I have an issue with facts on loading into fact sales table using variable parameter.
Okay.
Can you take a look at that? Actually, it succeeded, but instead of loading 45 rows, it's loading only 22. 23 is rejected. I don't know why.
Is it the same issue like unique constraint violation error? Did you check the log?
No errors. It is succeeded. Yeah.
Did you check that in the session log? There is no error in the session log?
No error. No error.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I'll take a look at it. Can you do one thing? I mean, can you do a favor to me? Just by copy pasting the session log, complete session log, save the session log and send me.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it and then reply back to you. You can drop me a mail, okay? I'll do that. Yeah, I'll send the updated SQL. Thank you then. So probably from today I'll have only 1 hour class because I have to step into another meeting. Thank you.
Hello, Karthik.
Yes, Sujata. Go ahead please, quickly.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, can you please send us this store procedure code today, whatever is
Yeah, that's what I
show
said.
us?
Okay, I'll send it.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.